Chapter 493. When Rui looked at Nongzhu in confusion. It was incredible that a cultivator in the Yuanying realm dared to be rude to a cultivator in the middle stage of Huashan realm again and again. The strangest thing was that Nongzhu didn't seem to take it seriously. Especially when Yu Qianqiu was facing Hua Zongming and the others, it seemed that he didn't care about a group of cultivators in the Huashan realm at all. Yu Qianqiu's background made Wen Rui deeply suspicious, and this was not the first time. The 11 cultivators quickly took out their weapons and chased up into the sky. However, as soon as they reached midair, they spread out into a circle and surrounded him as they chased after him. Obviously, after seeing what happened to the 3 people in front of them, they were afraid of Yu Qianqiu's thunderous sword rain, so they didn't dare to chase him directly. Instead, they scattered and surrounded him. The wind blew the clouds. Yu Qianqiu stopped in the sky and stared at the people who were chasing him. He said to himself, "Kind people will be bullied, and kind horses will be ridden. If I don't scare you today, I'm afraid that in the future, everyone will want to fight with me. Who can deal with them? It seems that my master's method of frightening the demon realm is worth learning. I should use thunderous methods to frighten ghosts and monsters. Kill." He grabbed 2 yellow talismans in his hands and threw them out. A series of explosions sounded in the sky, and thick smoke rolled and spread, covering Yu Qianqiu. He used the smoke talisman. The 11 people who were chasing him stopped and didn't dare to move forward rashly. After a while, the wind in the sky became stronger, and the spreading smoke gradually dispersed. Yu Qianqiu's figure appeared again in the sky on his sword. The 11 people looked at each other from afar. They didn't know what was going on, but they didn't dare to act recklessly. They didn't know what tricks Yu Qianqiu was playing. The thousands of people who were watching the battle looked at each other and didn't understand what Yu Qianqiu meant. Nongzhu pinched her chin and frowned. What tricks is he playing now? Yu Qianqiu, who was in the air, stared blankly at the dispersing smoke for a while. Then, he muttered to himself with an awkward expression, "Damn, how could I forget that the wind is too strong at high altitudes?" Originally, he wanted to set up a smokescreen in the air and then use his advantage of being able to control 1,000 swords to launch a sneak attack. Who knew that as soon as the smokescreen appeared, it would be blown away by the strong wind at high altitudes? Even he had fooled himself, let alone others. Unless it was a roundworm in his stomach, no one would be able to guess what he was playing at. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the 11 people who were biding their time. "What are you guys so nervous about?" At this moment, a white cloud came along with the wind and covered his figure once again. When the white cloud floated past, Yu Qianqiu revealed a look of realization. He patted his forehead and casually took out 2 smoke talismans. After a series of explosions, the smoke spread again in an instant and enveloped him. Others could not see what was happening inside, but he opened his arms in the smoke, and thick white fog gushed out from his body. Everyone found that after the smoke was blown away by the wind again, a white cloud appeared in the sky. The white cloud surged and expanded continuously. Gradually, it spread nearly a kilometer in the air before stopping. To everyone's surprise, all the surrounding white clouds were drifting with the wind, but this one was the only one that stayed in the air. Such a strange thing, everyone knew without guessing that it was Yu Qianqiu's doing. Even Nongzhu, who was below, looked up and was stunned. She said, "Is there anything that this guy can't do? He can actually make clouds." Last time, the miraculous method of making flowers and trees wither with the passage of time had already made him feel that it was incredible. Now that he had played with something new, it was an eye-opener for him. It was not difficult to evaporate water into mist, but the difficult part was to turn the mist into a cloud and not disperse. Hibiscus opened her small mouth in surprise. This man was like the sea, hiding many unknown things that needed time to slowly uncover. Yu Qianqiu hid in the clouds and chuckled. Just now, using the smoke to create a diversion was really unnecessary. It was the white cloud that floated past him that reminded him. White clouds were formed by water. He could control the water art, and he could also create clouds and rain. It was not difficult to make a cloud. Hence, he created a pile of it. There was another advantage to the clouds that he created, and that was because it was formed by his water art. It was not something that could be dispersed by the wind. It was completely under his control. Yu Qianqiu opened his arms in the clouds and found a little of the feeling of being an immortal. Every tiny drop of water that formed this cloud seemed to be a part of his body. He knew every movement in every place like the back of his hand. In this sea of clouds, he was the master. Nothing could escape his eyes. This feeling was too wonderful. Master was right. Indeed, the one who uses it well is invincible. Yu Qianqiu clicked his tongue in admiration. He knew that because of this unintentional action, he would have another method to deal with his enemies in the future. In the future, whether it was to investigate the enemy's situation or when escaping, turning water into mist would be a very good method of concealment. Ha! Yu Qianqiu's savage laughter came from the clouds. A bunch of trash, come at me. He was insulting them in public. The expressions of the 11 people changed. After waiting for a while, the leader scolded them for being cowards. Then, he shouted to the others, "Let's work together and disperse this cloud. Let's see where he can hide then." The 11 people cautiously approached the edge of the cloud. They were probably still a little afraid that the lightning sword rain would suddenly emerge from the cloud. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and felt the movement in this space. After waiting for a while, they didn't discover any strange movements. The 11 people took out all kinds of weapons and madly stirred the cloud. However, no matter how many changes you stirred or how many thousands of strands you pulled out, it would slowly float back. It was impossible to disperse it. Someone was so angry that he released his flying sword into the cloud and shot it randomly. With someone taking the lead, everyone else took out their own weapons and madly attacked the cloud. Yu Qianqiu crossed his arms in front of his chest. With a smile on his face, he stepped on the sword and didn't even bother to open his eyes. He leisurely dodged the attacks. This was his world. In this world, no matter how fast your flying sword was, where it came from, where it was going, and where it was moving, it would all appear clearly in his mind. As long as he dodged in advance, he would be able to evade it effortlessly. The 11 people madly attacked for a long time, but they didn't hear any reaction from inside. However, they didn't dare to go deep into the cloud. No one wanted to face the scene of thousands of swords. The leader shouted angrily, "Yu Qianqiu, if you have the guts, come out and fight openly. You're a pig brain. You have the nerve to say that you want to fight openly when 11 of you are fighting me alone." Yu Qianqiu's sneer came from inside. Everyone listened to the sound and determined the location. They took out their mystic tools and attacked the place where the sound came from. As a result, their mystic tools collided with each other. A series of rumbling noises came from inside, shaking the cloud. After recalling their mystic tools, Yu Qianqiu sneered again, "A bunch of cowardly rats." The voice came from another location. The 11 of them attacked at the same time, but once again, they missed. So Yu Qianqiu kept mocking him. The 11 people took turns to attack, but every time they missed, Yu Qianqiu's voice would change to another place and continue to sneer. After a while, someone suddenly shouted, "Everyone, release your divine sense and search. Let's see where he can run to." Everyone cheered and did as they said. Yu Qianqiu secretly sneered after hearing that. He finally reacted. "I'm waiting." With a flick of his sleeves, hundreds of black shadows drilled into the sea of clouds. Once the 11 people's divine sense entered the sea of clouds, they couldn't help but think that it was a close shave. There was a black flying sword hanging in the air every few days. No wonder this guy hid inside and refused to come out. As everyone expected, he wanted to lure everyone in for a sneak attack. But the strange thing was, when everyone released their mystic tools to attack, why didn't they touch these flying swords? Everyone used their divine sense to check these black flying swords, but they didn't find anything special. Their divine sense continued to spread inside. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes to feel the movements of the 11 divine senses in the clouds. When they were deep inside, his eyes suddenly opened. The hundreds of flying swords instantly released the power of the black fire and shot towards the 11 divine senses. Actually, he understood the power of the black fire. Otherwise, it wouldn't have become the mystical fire that separated the yin and yang realms. Ever since he got it, he had been suppressing its use and never abused it. Because he knew that the trump card was to be used as a trump card. He couldn't always take it out to show off. Otherwise, it wouldn't have the miraculous effect of killing. Unless it was a critical moment, he would never take it out and use it openly. Occasionally, he would use it for a while. Ah! In an instant, the sky was filled with cries of grief. That kind of unforgettable, soul-burning pain was unbearable for anyone. The sound was so miserable that even the people below had goosebumps when they heard it. The people who were watching the battle with their heads raised were shocked by the screams. They saw the cloud in the sky suddenly expand and engulf the 11 people in an instant. Soon, the screams disappeared without a trace. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They all knew that the 11 people were probably finished. What puzzled everyone was that those people were still fine outside the cloud, so why did they suddenly curl up into a ball and let out such miserable wails? What the hell happened? Yu Qianqiu stood quietly in the cloud. The 11 twisted corpses had been turned into beehives by the flying swords. The flying swords stabbed the corpses in front of him and cut off the storage pouches hanging from the waist of the 11 corpses. He raised his palm and hundreds of flying swords drilled out of the corpses and returned to his sleeve. Losing their support, the 11 corpses fell from the clouds with a whoosh. Yu Qianqiu watched them leave. He put his palms together and chanted, Amitabha. I really didn't want you to reveal my secret. So I killed you. Excellent, excellent. The people below saw the 11 figures fall quickly. Paw paw. They were embedded in the soft ground. There were already 14 corpses on the ground. The group of people looked at each other silently. Chapter 494. Although Furong had been cultivating for many years, it was the first time she saw someone kill someone. Moreover, it was Yu Qianqiu who shared the same bed with her. He killed one person in the imperial palace, and now he killed 14 people here. Especially those shrill screams just now, it made her hands and feet feel a little numb. Nongzhu noticed her abnormality. From her eyes, which were as pure as her own daughter's, she saw a frightened expression. She frowned slightly and thought to herself, I don't know where Yu Qianqiu kidnapped this girl from. It seems that she has never seen the world. How can he take her to walk in this kind of environment? No wonder that guy asked me to bring her back. Ouch! A long howl came from the ninth heaven, which attracted everyone's attention. They saw Yu Qianqiu jump out of the white clouds, riding on his flying sword and descending rapidly. As soon as he came out, the big cloud began to fluctuate. It was wrinkled by the wind, changed shape, and slowly drifted away. The flying sword fell rapidly from the sky. When it was close to the ground, it suddenly drew an arc and threw its head up. Yu Qianqiu jumped up in the air, somersaulted a few times, and landed steadily on the ground. The flying sword made a cyan arc and went into his sleeve with a swoosh. Yu Qianqiu strode to Wen Rui's feet and picked up the 2 storage bags in front of everyone's eyes. Then he walked back to the field with the bags in his hand. He glanced around coldly, raised the storage bags in his hand, and shouted with unyielding fighting spirit, who else is not convinced? Yu Qianqiu will fight with you anytime. The crowd moved and whispered to each other. Although they were indignant, no one dared to act rashly after witnessing the fate of more than 10 people. Especially the 47 people who retreated before, they secretly thought that they were lucky to escape. The original infant stage people in the crowd all looked at the crossing calamity stage people. No one answered. Yu Qianqiu raised the storage bags and shouted again, "Where are the people who shouted before? Who else is not convinced? Yu Qianqiu will fight with you anytime. Young man, you've already killed so many people. Why are you still so overbearing?" A voice rang out, and a commotion broke out among the crowd in the south, opening up a path. An old man in a homespun long gown walked out. He first bowed to Nongzhu and Wenrui, and then walked to the opposite of Yu Qianqiu. He had a few strands of mustache and was neither fat nor thin. His complexion was rosy and his eyes were shining brightly. He had the appearance of a Taoist master. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly, "You only see me being aggressive, but have you ever seen others being aggressive towards me? My original intention was to travel around the various countries without any other intentions. Who would have thought that Huazongming, Yan Ji, and the other deity-severing experts would force me into a corner, forcing me to say such a big lie? He pointed at the crowd and continued in a stern voice, "In the imperial palace, more than 300 cultivators from various countries forced me to fight. Now that I've suffered a loss, it's me being aggressive. What kind of logic is this?" The old man stroked his mustache and said indifferently, "I don't care about what happened before, but you've earned enough fame. You'd better stop and leave this place. Go back to your Huaxia cultivation world." Yu Qianqiu looked him up and down, then laughed wildly, "Who do you think you are? Yan Ji said he wouldn't let me leave alive. Do you dare to deny Yan Ji's words? Then I'd like to ask, what's your cultivation level? Can it be higher than Yan Ji's? If your cultivation level is higher than Yan Ji's and you can let me leave safely, I'll listen to you." As soon as he finished speaking, Nongzhu's voice sounded in his ears, "Young man, restrain yourself. This person is called Chu Dingfang. You can't afford to offend him. He's a disciple of Hu Changshu, a deity-severing late-stage cultivator who is as famous as Yin Baikong. His cultivation level has already reached the late stage of tribulation." "Damn it! Why didn't you say so earlier? Don't you know that I hate people who take advantage of their seniority? I've already said it, how can I take it back?" Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and looked at Nongzhu, who was smiling slyly. He cursed in his heart, "This bastard is doing this on purpose." However, he was calm in his heart. He didn't plan to go back halfway. How could he be scared off by someone so easily? Moreover, his master's reputation was much higher than his master's. It wasn't like he couldn't beat him, so why should he be afraid of him? It didn't make sense. Chu Dingfang's expression was uncertain. His cultivation level was indeed not as high as Yan Ji's, but with his background, if he wanted to send Yu Qianqiu out, Yan Ji wouldn't dare to do anything to him. The key was that Yu Qianqiu had said this. If he made a decision now, it would be the same as going against Yan Ji. The power of Yan Ji, Huazongming, and the others was not small. When the time came, his master would probably punish him in order to save Yan Ji's face. He would take it as an explanation to Yan Ji. Chu Dingfang immediately became angry from embarrassment. He changed the topic and said, "I heard that you claim to be the most powerful cultivator below the soul formation stage." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed at the 14 bodies on the ground. He said proudly, "For now, that is the truth. I heard that any cultivator below the soul formation stage can fight with you if he can take out 1,000,000 top-grade spirit stones." Chu Dingfang's tone was aggressive. Yu Qianqiu sneered and didn't say anything. He took a storage bag with 11,000,000 top-grade spirit stones and threw another one to Wenrui. He was telling Wenrui to do whatever he wanted with his actions. Chu Dingfang took out a storage bag with cold eyes and threw it to Wen Rui without turning his head. Nongzhu looked at the storage bag on the ground and calculated. This guy had killed 15 people, which was equivalent to 15 million top-grade spirit stones. If this job was done well, even a spirit stone mine with a high output would not be able to mine so many spirit stones in a year, right? Nongzhu looked at the storage bag on Chu Dingfang's waist and her eyes lit up. If this guy could get that storage bag, he would make a fortune today. You asked for it. Don't blame anyone else. Chu Dingfang said indifferently. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared. Nongzhu's pupils shrank and her heart skipped a beat. There was a huge difference between the early stage and the late stage of the tribulation stage. Teleportation. Yu Qianqiu was greatly alarmed, but he reacted quickly. At the same time that the other party disappeared, he leaped up without a care for anything else. Ah! With a roar, he opened his arms and a fierce blue fire burst out at a speed that could devour everything. It was to defend against the attack from an unknown direction. The exploding blue fire made people around exclaim. It was the first time for them to see someone who could contain so many flames in his body. Moreover, they were blue flames. The majestic and unparalleled heat waves rushed around in an instant. Those with low cultivation could not resist it at all and fled in panic. Nongzhu did not say anything. She pointed out a light ball and wrapped hibiscus in it. She couldn't let Yu Qianqiu be distracted now. Wen Rui also released a light ball to protect Wen Bai. Just as Yu Qianqiu leaped into the air, Chu Dingfang suddenly appeared just a step away from where he had been standing. She waved her palm and wanted to slap him, but she realized that she had hit nothing but air. Chu Dingfang looked up and suddenly saw a wave of hot and crazy blue flame pressing down on her face. She was shocked. The protective upstanding qi rushed out quickly. However, the terrible temperature that came with it kept pressing through the transparent protective upstanding qi, wave after wave higher than the previous one. Chu Dingfang was shocked. Now it was not a question of whether to fight back or not, but to get out of this frighteningly hot sea of fire first. He had never seen a flame that he could not resist for a while with his cultivation. The spherical protective upstanding qi wrapped around him and quickly slid away from the ground, leaving a deep ditch on the spot. As soon as he got out of the raging blue flame sea, he heard a roar coming from the monstrous flames. Watch my blade. Chu Dingfang abruptly turned her head and saw Yu Qianqiu chasing out of the raging flames on a green flying sword. He was holding a large black saber in both hands, and his face was full of anger. He jumped up from the flying sword like a god of death and slashed at Chu Dingfang's protective aura. So fierce. Everyone was deeply shocked by the incomparable scene of Yu Qianqiu rushing out of the sea of fire. Two words emerged in their minds: fierce and unafraid of death. Forong's eyes were full of shock. This scene was too shocking for someone like her, who was psychologically close to a weak woman. Wen Bai, who had been dissatisfied with Yu Qianqiu deceiving him, at this moment, had no resentment at all. Just the momentum of his appearance was undeniable. Generally, even a Yuanying late-stage cultivator could only run away when he saw a Yuanying late-stage cultivator. But this guy actually turned around and chased after a Yuanying late-stage cultivator with a broadsword. He rushed up and slashed at them. Nongzhu, on the other hand, was beaming with joy. She kept clicking her tongue. Hiss. The big black broadsword slashed down, and the protective upstanding qi was like a thin piece of paper. Chu Dingfang was scared out of his wits. The blade almost brushed past the tip of his nose. This broadsword was a little too long. He thought that his protective upstanding qi could completely block this broadsword, and he could take Yu Qianqiu's life with a backhand. He was just waiting for Yu Qianqiu to pounce on him. Who knew that this would be the result? The most terrifying thing was that he was clearly burning just now, but when the broadsword broke through, he immediately felt like he was thrown into an ice cave. There was also the heart-palpitating aura that came head-on, as if he had instantly arrived at hell on earth. Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu was also very regretful. If he had been a little more courageous just now and pounced forward a little more, he might have been able to chop this old bastard alive with this broadsword. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. But it still gave him courage, and he waved his broadsword and roared, "Meeting on a narrow path, the brave one wins." His voice was loud enough to shake the surroundings, as if he was afraid that people did not know how brave he was. Chu Dingfang was shocked for a moment and frantically dodged, not knowing how to quickly teleport away. Yu Qianqiu chased after him, raising his broadsword with both hands and slashing wildly. That unstoppable spirit caused Chu Dingfang to be in danger again and again. In fact, Chu Dingfang was confused by the aura on the broadsword, and could not react for a moment. Behind Yu Qianqiu, there was a surging green sea of fire chasing after him. In the sea of fire, there were also some green, faintly discernible flying swords flashing in and out. In addition, Yu Qianqiu was holding a 2-meter-long big black broadsword that was taller than him, chasing after Chu Dingfang and slashing wildly. The fighting scene was enough to make everyone dumbfounded. Damn it! You asked for it. Yu Qianqiu himself did not know why Chu Dingfang was so easy to bully now, so he ignored it for the time being. Relying on the fierceness of the fire, the size of the broadsword, and the boldness, he raised his broadsword and chased after and slashed wildly. Chapter 495. The cyan light illuminated the surroundings, rendering the surroundings cyan. Yu Qianqiu wielded his broadsword like a windmill, while Chu Dingfang struggled to move forward. Those who were clamoring in the imperial palace felt a chill down their spines in the face of the rolling heat wave. Fortunately, they did not act rashly. It seemed that even if more than 300 people attacked Yu Qianqiu at the same time, they would not be able to get close to him. How dare they provoke him? Thinking about it, Ding Wei died unjustly. He fought with an opponent he could not defeat, but he died without leaving a corpse. When Rui looked at the brilliant cyan flame and said to Nongzhu, "Sir, I heard that Yu Qianqiu has a famous incantation in the cultivation world of Huaxia called Star Flame Incantation. Is it this incantation?" Nongzhu chuckled and replied, Probably. Furong and Wenbai, who were standing aside, stared at her intently. The surrounding spectators remained silent. 2 old men in the crowd frowned deeply. One of them was dressed in black and the other in purple. After exchanging glances, the black-robed old man transmitted his voice, "Brother Yu, did you notice? Chu Dingfang seems to be a little off." "Yes, he seems to be in a trance." The purple-robed elder nodded and replied, "He seems to be bewitched by something. Let me have a try." The black-robed elder gathered his qi and shouted to Chu Dingfang with his sound-transmitting stick, "Brother Chu, wake up." Chu Dingfang, whose dodging speed was getting slower and slower, felt his eardrums buzzing. His whole body shook, and his eyes flashed. Then he disappeared from the gap between the shadows of the broadswords. Nongzhu, who was watching the battle, narrowed his eyes and quickly glanced at the crowd. From Chu Dingfang's change, he knew that someone had secretly helped him. When Rui also frowned and looked around. In the cultivation world, there were rules in a duel. As long as one did not admit defeat or quit, others could not intervene. Such behavior was the most abominable. Once the rules were broken, someone had to uphold them. Everything was like this. Nothing could be accomplished without rules. Yu Qianqiu naturally sensed that something was amiss. He was slightly startled, and the hundreds of flying swords behind him rushed forward to cover their retreat. He quickly jumped onto a flying sword and dove back into the sea of fire. An angry scolding came from the sea of green flames, "Shut your grandma's mouth." Which son of AB*TCH interfered in the dark? "Stand out if you have the guts." Just as he was about to succeed, someone suddenly interfered and ruined his plans. It would be strange if he wasn't angry. The purple-robed old man in the crowd frowned and said via voice transmission, "Brother Guan, aren't you going a little too far by breaking the rules?" The black-robed old man replied calmly, "Rules depend on who you're talking to. This kid is from the Chinese cultivation world, so he's our enemy. There's no need to talk about rules with him. Everyone should be punished." The onlookers also had some clues. With Yu Qianqiu's voice, everyone immediately understood that someone had interfered in the dark. Everyone was shaking their heads and searching. At least one thing was certain. The person who could transmit the voice must have cultivation above the crossing calamity stage. Therefore, everyone's eyes fell on the faces of the cultivators at the crossing calamity stage. However, transmission was elusive. It was difficult to find evidence except for the person involved. If the person involved didn't admit it, others couldn't do anything even if they guessed who it was. After all, there was no solid evidence. Nongzhu and Wenrui looked around. They looked at each other and shook their heads. There was nothing they could do. Suddenly, the two of them raised their heads and looked up at the sky. Their reaction attracted everyone's attention. They saw Chu Dingfang standing still in the air. Apparently, he was adjusting his body. Maybe his body was affected by something just now. After a long time, he slowly descended. A cold light flashed out of his storage bag. It flew around him for a few rounds and landed in his hand. It was a weapon that looked like a sword or a saber. It seemed like they were going to make a big move. The unusual atmosphere caused Yu Qianqiu to pop his head out of the sea of flames to look. When he discovered Chu Dingfang above him, he was just about to shrink back into the sea of flames when his gaze landed on Chu Dingfang's weapon. Ghost Blade. In this moment of delay, Chu Dingfang's eyes narrowed and she immediately discovered him. He dashed toward Meng Qi. He shook the saber in his hand and a huge shadow dozens of meters long appeared. The huge saber shadow slashed down at the sea of fire. Damn! Yu Qianqiu was slightly shocked. He quickly dove into the sea of fire to avoid it. The saber energy that came slashing down from the air stirred up a powerful gust of wind as it charged forward. With a loud boom, the sea of green flames that covered an area of several hundred square meters was struck to the bottom with one slash. Earth and rocks flew everywhere. The sea of fire that had been split into two was pushed to the sides by the strong wind. Why is the sky clear? Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding in the sea of fire, immediately revealed himself. At this moment, he was standing on the flying sword with a dumbfounded expression. He was holding a large saber as he stood there like a little wife who had been stripped naked and had suffered all kinds of grievances. There was a long and unforgettable trench on the ground. When the saber energy disappeared, Yu Qianqiu snapped out of his daze. He looked up and pointed his saber at Meng Qi. He shouted angrily, "Kill!" The sea of green fire that had been split into two instantly turned into two green fire dragons. They coiled in the air and pounced at Chu Dingfang with incomparable brilliance. Chu Dingfang smiled coldly. He quickly rose 100 meters into the air. He shook the saber in his hand and a huge energy shadow appeared again. He moved his wrist quickly. In an instant, he stirred up a strong wind. The two fire dragons that were pouncing at him immediately lost their momentum. They spun rapidly in the strong wind and merged into a pillar of fire in the blink of an eye. Yu Qianqiu immediately sensed that blue fire was no longer under his control, so he gave up on resisting the powerful wind. His cultivation base was no match for blue fires. Forcibly resisting it would only result in him getting injured. Watch how I extinguish this pile of demonic fire of yours. Chu Dingfang laughed coldly in the air. Then, he flew straight up into the sky. The huge saber energy in his hand moved continuously and formed a strong suction force. He pulled the pillar of fire into the sky. Based on his actions, it seemed like he wanted to draw the green fire into the sky and then disperse it in the air. He did not want to give Yu Qianqiu a chance to retract it. A toad yawning. How arrogant! Yu Qianqiu spat. Although he could not fight his opponent head-on with his cultivation base, his opponent's cultivation base was not strong enough to seal everything. His ability to summon the fire element was not to be trifled with. Even if he could not control it, he could still retract it. He swung his saber diagonally and steadied himself on the flying sword. He raised his palm and shouted, "Come back!" A line of fire flowed out from the bottom of the rising fire dragon. The terminal was connected to Yu Qianqiu's palm. The moment the green fire touched his palm, it retracted even faster. Chu Dingfang was still flying up. In the end, he drew a green line of fire between the sky and the earth. Fortunately, it was not nighttime. Otherwise, even the commoners of Deyang City would be able to see it. Chu Dingfang looked a little strange. It was impossible for him to lose to a nascent soul cultivator with his cultivation base at the end of the tribulation passing stage. The huge saber energy turned into a shadow. Even the people on the ground a few hundred meters below reacted. Their clothes and hair were all sucked up. They had to circulate their energy to suppress it. However, this place was formed by the mountain peak that Yin Baikong had destroyed. The new layer of soil on the surface was soft. Immediately, the yellow soil flew up into the air, along with the withered grass and rotten branches of the surrounding mountains. The place immediately turned into a yellow haze. It covered the sky and the earth, making it impossible to see anything. Although the commotion was not small, it could not stop the green fire from flowing out of the eye of the storm. Before it went deep, he felt a strange and majestic aura. It contained an unknown and mysterious power. Just by touching it with his divine sense, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. Chapter 496. The spectators below also noticed something was wrong from the gradually fading yellow dust. There was another cloud in the sky, motionless. The cloud was exactly the same as the previous battle, and it immediately gave everyone a strange feeling. Could Chu Dingfang be inside? The crowd could not help but look at each other. Especially the black-robed elder and the purple-robed elder, they already felt something was wrong. However, the cloud was still peaceful and quiet, without any reaction. Would that guy play the same trick again? Nongzhu pinched her chin and thought. Yu Qianqiu hid in a corner of the cloud, sensing the movement inside. Seeing that Chu Dingfang had fallen into his trap, he sneered. In order to prevent the other party from escaping after discovering something was wrong, he deliberately offered the tempting big black saber, which made the other party salivate. Noticing that Chu Dingfang's divine awareness had touched the big black saber, he slowly stretched out his clenched fist and suddenly opened it. Chu Dingfang's divine awareness sensed the majestic power in the big black saber, hesitating whether to take it or not, but he was afraid of falling into a trap. After all, it was not so easy. After thinking about it, he decided not to rush. After he killed that guy, the saber would still be his. However, just when his divine awareness was about to leave the big black saber and continue to search for Yu Qianqiu, there was a sudden bang. The big black saber exploded in an instant, exploding into a raging black flame, instantly drowning his divine awareness in a black sea of fire. The pain that followed was like being cut by thousands of knives, appearing in every corner of his body in an instant. It was like countless sharp knives were cutting every piece of his skin and drilling into every bone. There seemed to be countless worms wriggling in his head, nibbling away at them. It was like his whole body was suffering in a fire, as if it was going to burn him alive. The pain was suffocating, but he was struggling in the endless sea of bitterness, never able to find the other side, and had to suffer like this. The heart-wrenching pain that he was unable to extricate himself from numbness occupied every single one of his nerves. The pain seeped into his bones and soul. Oh. Chu Dingfang hugged her head with her hands and curled into a ball. Her face was twisted to the extreme. She tore off her beard and hair with her hands and scratched her face with her nails. She didn't seem to know who she was and was in a state worse than death. F***ck me. Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He did not expect the response to be so extraordinary. This guy's cultivation level was too high. He was afraid that ordinary methods would not work on him, so he purposely blew up the black knife condensed by the black fire and enlarged the fire to burn his mother's divine sense. He did not expect that it would burn a little too much. He appeared on his sword and charged over. With a wave of his hand, he collected the black flames cleanly. Chu Dingfang could no longer stay in the air. Her body swayed and fell down from the clouds. Yu Qianqiu quickly rushed over and grabbed the old man's storage pouch, lifting him up. The old man's twisted and struggling appearance was truly unbearable to look at. The old man couldn't even scream and could only howl. He raised one hand and a green flame appeared. He wanted to give him a quick death. However, after a slight pause, the green flame left a little green glow on her fingertips and cut the rope on the storage bag. Chu Dingfang fell down. I'll use you to test my absorbing star's great skill. Yu Qianqiu swung his palm at the falling person. White smoke rose from Chu Dingfang's body, and he instantly shriveled up like a skeleton. He floated down from the clouds. The people below had been paying attention to the sky above. When the explosion sounded, the clouds above their heads instantly darkened. No one knew what was going on. Nongzhu was the only one who thought of the word black fire. Then came a terrifying scream. The scream was even worse than the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. It was hard to imagine that it came from a human. Judging from the tone, it should be Chu Dingfang's voice. Another person followed in his footsteps, and it was an expert at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage. Everyone looked at each other, wondering what was wrong with the clouds. Whoosh! Chu Dingfang's katana was the first to fall. It directly stabbed into the ground, proving that the unfortunate person they had guessed was right. Then, everyone saw a body fall. The strange thing was that the speed of the body's fall was not that fast, and it seemed to be floating. Pow! Chu Dingfang, who was curled up, squatted steadily on the soft ground. Not dead. Everyone was stunned. Suddenly, there was a crisp, hua sound. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Chu Dingfang was instantly torn into pieces after a short pause. Her entire body shattered into a pile and collapsed on the ground. His whole body collapsed into pieces and powder. Hiss. Many people in the crowd gasped in disbelief. What kind of death was this? In fact, the moment Chu Dingfang's body broke into pieces, the person who was facing him saw the unforgettable scene. His face was dry and shriveled, and he was just skin and bones. Even his eyeballs had dried up to the size of 2 soybeans, hanging outside his eye sockets. The inside of his eye sockets were dark. The skin and flesh on his face shrunk together, and his white teeth had also decayed into a withered yellow color. It was as if Chu Dingfang had lived for thousands of years, and he was a dried corpse from thousands of years in the future. If not for the movement above and the robe on his body, who would believe that he was Chu Dingfang? Unfortunately, the direction he was facing was where hibiscus was. Furong retched and almost threw up. Fortunately, the dried corpse collapsed in the blink of an eye. Otherwise, Furong would have vomited if she had looked at it for a while longer. When Rui was also shocked. This kind of death was too strange. Nongzhu's pupils suddenly shrank. She immediately thought of the scene of Yu Qianqiu taking away the life of a flower with one palm strike that night. It had also withered in an instant. Although one was a flower and the other was a human, there was no doubt that both of them had the same experience. This guy finally used this skill on a human. Nongzhu remembered that Yu Qianqiu wanted to try this skill on her that night. If she had agreed at that time, but could not resist it, she would have ended up like the ugly rotten corpse in front of her. She shuddered at the thought that she might become like this. The more she thought about it, the more scared she became. She could not help but curse in her heart, "Bastard, he doesn't even know the importance of something he has just learned, and he wants to use me to practice. I don't know what old Bai taught him. Of all the things he could have taught me, why did he teach me such a scary thing?" Nongju decided on the spot that she would leave this place as soon as this thing was over. She could not help but talk back to that guy. If she made him angry one day, he would do the same to her. What if she could not resist it? When Rui took a deep breath, turned his head, and asked, "Mister, I've never seen or heard of the magic arts used by Yu Qianqiu. Can you tell me where he came from?" In his impression, Mr. Nongju had the widest circle of friends in the world. Since he was tolerant of Yu Qianqiu in everything, he must know his background. Nongju paused and shook her head slightly. She replied, "You'd better not know. Anyway, his background is very powerful. Your Wen family can't afford to offend him." "Is he Bai Changchun's disciple?" Wen Rui was surprised. The old ancestor of the Wen family, Wen Lanfeng, was the second master in the world, second only to Bai Changchun. If the Wen family couldn't afford to offend him, who else could it be except Bai Changchun? Nongju was stunned. He had guessed it correctly. But what Wen Rui said next made her even more stunned. Wen Rui shook his head and denied himself. "I don't think so. I've seen Bai Changchun's skills. Even if it's unpredictable and unconstrained, it's completely dignified and arrogant. It's not similar to Yu Qianqiu's skills at all. A master and disciple wouldn't be like this. And Yu Qianqiu's skill is full of evil qi. It's not like he's Bai Changchun's disciple." Nongju was speechless. "How do you know it's not Bai Changchun who taught him?" "I heard the skill from Bai Changchun and witnessed the process of understanding it. In short, if your Wen family can help him in the future, try your best to help him. It won't do any harm to your family." Nongju gave an ambiguous answer. She didn't want to make another enemy for Yu Qianqiu in the world. "Thank you for reminding me, sir." Wen Rui nodded slightly and sighed. It said that all the skills in the world originate from Huaxia. Yu Qianqiu is from Huaxia and his skills are really magical. It seems that it's a good thing that our Wen family didn't intervene in the fight between the two sides. The vast Huaxia is really full of hidden talents. It's not as simple as it looks. I'm afraid that things won't go so smoothly for the other countries. Nongju glanced at him and was speechless. She thought, "You're really good at making connections." Howl. A clear roar resounded from the 9 heavens, as if it was announcing its victory. Yu Qianqiu rode his sword and flew straight down. After landing, he glanced at Chu Dingfang's remains and was quite satisfied with the power of his water conjuration. This was the first time he killed a cultivator in the last phase of the heavens test. It was really memorable. Who else is not convinced? This short sentence revealed an intense self-confidence. Yu Qianqiu coldly surveyed his surroundings, exuding a disdainful aura. He felt that he hadn't been like this for a long time. He had been a gangster for a long time. The feeling of being a gang leader that he had forgotten for a long time had returned. Nongju smiled bitterly. "You killed Bing Qingzi's disciple, Yin Baikang's disciple, and now you killed Hu Changshu's disciple. You've offended all of them. Among the top 10 cultivators in the last phase of the spirit-severing realm, you've already offended 3 of them. Good luck." The black-robed elder in the crowd transmitted his voice to the purple-robed elder beside him. "Brother Yu, this kid's cultivation is still low, but he has already shown his outstanding talent. He will definitely become a disaster in the future. Let's attack together and take this opportunity to get rid of this kid." The purple-robed elder frowned and replied, "Brother Guan, you and I are 2 cultivators in the last phase of the heavens test against a nascent soul cultivator. Won't we be a joke in front of so many people? That's not the way to put it. The black-robed elder said in a deep voice. A kid from Huaxia challenged the cultivators of the other countries. If we let him leave alive, and none of us can stop him, that would be the biggest joke in the world. What's more, he said it himself. It doesn't matter if we all attack together. It's not against the rules if it's just us. Chapter 497. Brother Guan, didn't you notice that this kid's magic art is a bit strange? Do you really think we can kill him? The purple-robed elder voiced out his concern. The black-robed elder laughed and said, Brother you worry too much. Did you notice that this kid's secret lies in the mist? As long as we don't go into the mist, he can't do anything to us. Or rather, kill him before he can release the cloud and mist. Ha ha. If we fight together, I don't think that kid will have the chance to release the mist. Brother you, after we kill that kid, we can split the things in the storage pouch, including the 2 sabers. What do you think? The purple-robed elder was hesitant at first, but when he heard about the 2 sabers, he frowned and nodded slightly. Maybe we can try. Yu Qianqiu thought that the battle just now was enough to shock this group of people. Seeing that no one answered him, he sneered and was about to pick up the storage pouch. Unexpectedly, before he could reach Wenrui, 2 storage pouches flew through the air and smashed in front of him. Looking back, an old man in a black robe and an old man in a purple robe appeared out of nowhere. The former sneered and said, You don't need to pick up the things, we will pick them up for you later. His tone was full of confidence. The onlookers were in an uproar again. When they saw that Yu Qianqiu could kill Chu Dingfang, who was in the final stage of the Crossing Heavens test, they were really shocked. They didn't expect that an original infant stage cultivator could do this. They were already prepared to lose face. The sudden appearance of the 2 people gave everyone hope. Many people knew them, and the appearance of these 2 cultivators in the final stage of the Crossing Heavens test surprised everyone. Originally, they thought that people in the final stage of the Crossing Heavens test would care about their reputation, so it was impossible for more than 2 people to fight a cultivator in the original infant stage at the same time. However, a cultivator in the final stage of the Crossing Heavens test might not be able to defeat Yu Qianqiu. Just when they were about to accept this unacceptable fact, something unexpected happened. At this moment, no one dared to look down on the behavior of these 2 people, because it concerned everyone's reputation. However, some people didn't like it. Nongzhu snorted coldly and said to Wenrui, Some people are really shameless. Wenrui smiled but did not say anything. Yu Qianqiu was the one who boasted. Since he dared to say it, he must have the courage to face reality. He could not blame others. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and looked at the 2 of them. Since they dared to say such words at this time, they must be cultivators at the end of the tribulation stage. As expected, Nongzhu's voice rang in his ears, Don't be careless. The one in black is Guan Zhongkai, the disciple of Yin Baikong's eldest disciple, Sikongju. The one in purple is Yulandu, the disciple of Shengguan Taiping, a middle-stage deity transformation cultivator from the Purple Thistle Kingdom. Both of them are at the late stage of the crossing tribulation. Have the 2 of you decided to come at me together? Yu Qianqiu asked sarcastically. Yulandu's expression was slightly awkward. On the contrary, Guan Zhongkai's expression was calm as he sneered, If you are afraid, it is not too late. Kneel and beg for mercy. Leave behind the things in your storage pouch and I will spare your life. If you want the things, you have to have the ability to take them. As soon as Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, he immediately threw out a flying sword and quickly flew into the sky. These 2 clearly knew that he had some tricks up his sleeves. Since they still dared to come at him, they must have the confidence to deal with him. He did not dare to underestimate them now. Hee hee. Guan Zhongkai sneered. A flying sword flashed out of his storage pouch and directly chased after Yu Qianqiu in the sky. He himself teleported and disappeared. Without any hesitation, Yulan soared into the sky at an extremely fast speed with a whoosh sound. Everyone's gaze was attracted to them. Furong had also roughly guessed the cultivation of these two. She tightly shut her mouth and did not say a word. She was silently worried. She was afraid that if she made a sound, it would affect Yu Qianqiu. Hearing the whistling sound coming from below, Yu Qianqiu glanced at it. He rode his sword and dodged horizontally, brushing past the flying sword. A strong gust of wind almost blew him off his sword. This was the result of a huge difference in cultivation. Just as he dodged the attack with lingering fear, he realized that in the direction he was dodging, the black-robed Guan Zhongkai had been waiting for a long time in front of him. He sneered and casually snatched the flying sword that was flying towards him. He shook out a huge sword aura and slashed down. F***ck. Yu Qianqiu was startled and quickly dodged again. The transparent sword aura brushed past him again. But no matter which direction he dodged, Guan Zhongkai was able to block in front of him in time. He skillfully and easily chased after him with his sword. Every time, he was frightened and narrowly dodged. In the eyes of others, Guan Zhongkai was like a cat toying with a mouse. His opponent didn't even give him a chance to release the fog. He could only release a little for a short period of time, but it didn't have any effect. Without saying anything further, green light flashed on his two sleeves. Instantly, a sky full of flying swords circled around him to protect him. At the same time, over 100 swords attacked Guan Zhongkai in a roundabout way, hoping to buy him some time to breathe. And indeed, it had some effect. Guan Zhongkai was somewhat apprehensive as he swung his sword like he was swatting flies. After all, 3 nascent soul stage cultivators had been mysteriously killed after being surrounded by these green flying swords. Over 100 flying swords were constantly knocked away, but they also continued to entangle him. They were just like flies. Whoosh! Suddenly, another whistling sound came from below. When he glanced over, he was startled again. It was Yulan who saw him start to counterattack. She immediately raised her palms and pushed out a basin-sized ball of light that shot towards him. F***ck. Kamehameha Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu's eyes widened and he hurriedly rode his sword to dodge. Although he managed to dodge, the flying swords behind him that he didn't dodge in time were damaged. Bang! Amidst a violent explosion, the densely packed flying swords that were circling in the air were blown into pieces and scattered in all directions. The powerful shockwave was like a heavy hammer that fiercely smashed into his back. The shockwave directly knocked him off the flying sword he was standing on. Yu Qianqiu felt his vision turn black. He felt a sweetness in his throat and spat out a mouthful of blood. In just a few moments, he was already injured. This was the result of a huge difference in cultivation. His opponent had come prepared. With his nascent soul stage cultivation, he was simply no match for his opponent. He was easily dealt with. Hibiscus, who was below, covered her mouth with her hand, and tears instantly flowed out. Nongzhu's expression was grim, but she still sent a voice transmission to Hibiscus, comforting her. "Girl, don't worry. This kid won't die so easily." Wen Rui's expression was also somewhat grave. If this Yu Qianqiu really did have a powerful background, and if he were to attract an extraordinary person, then this matter would become even more serious. The cultivators from the various countries who were watching the battle erupted in cheers. They had finally taught this arrogant fellow a lesson. In a moment of absent-mindedness, the flying swords immediately lost control and fell one after another. Guan Zhongkai got rid of the fly's harassment. His expression darkened and the sword in his hand floated up. He pushed it out with his palm and it shot towards the falling Yu Qianqiu like a bolt of lightning. Yulando teleported to the other side and pushed out another ball of light. Together with Guan Zhongkai's flying swords, they launched a pincer attack. From the looks of it, the two of them wanted to finish the battle in one go. Yu Qianqiu spat out a mouthful of blood. He felt relieved and his vision became clear again. He quickly glanced at them and a burst of uncontrollable anger burst out. "How dare you hit me?" "Ah!" Yu Qianqiu looked up to the sky and roared. All the green fire elements stored in his body burst out in an instant. Not a single bit was left, surging green flames spewed out like an explosion. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan Dou's pupils shrank rapidly. The flames hadn't arrived yet, but the unparalleled heat had arrived first. The two of them suddenly felt like they had poked a hornet's nest. Without saying a word, they quickly turned around and displayed the fastest flying speed in their lives. However, they still felt that it wasn't enough. They teleported again and again, exhausting a lot of their cultivation to escape. Previously, Chu Dingfang couldn't even withstand the high temperature of the green flames when he hid inside his protective aura and had to escape. The two of them had about the same cultivation as him. They could tell at a glance that it was powerful. There was no need to try and escape. At first, the two of them thought that the green flames hidden in Yu Qianqiu's body were the same ones that he had released earlier. It wouldn't be difficult to avoid them. Who knew that there were so many of them? Was he still human? How could a human hide so many flames? The two of them even had the urge to curse. How did they meet such a monster? They were still fighting to their heart's content earlier and wanted to kill that brat. How did they end up being forced to escape in the blink of an eye? If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have joined in the fun. When the ball of light released by Yulan was still 100 meters away from Yu Qianqiu, it was directly roasted by the green flames and exploded with a loud explosion. However, it only set off a ripple in the sea of flames. It didn't affect Yu Qianqiu at all. Needless to say, the flying swords released by Guan Zhongkai were melted into liquid in the sea of flames. Guan Zhongkai, who had a connection with the flying swords, felt his heart ache. That flying sword was a high-grade transcendent artifact given to him by his master. The thousands of green flying swords that were originally scattered flew up into the sky and merged into the sea of flames. The terrifying sea of flames that filled the sky swelled up again. After quickly escaping for several kilometers, Guan Zhongkai and Yulan finally got rid of the pursuit of the green flames. The two of them stood on opposite ends of the sea of flames. They didn't look at each other, but their mood was completely the same. The two of them almost collapsed from exhaustion. With their cultivation, they could only teleport 500 or 600 meters at most. Teleportation consumed too much of their cultivation. It was not a technique that could be used multiple times. They had used teleportation more than 10 times. How could they bear it? It was really too tiring. When the two of them turned around to look, their intestines almost turned green with regret. They could have escaped to the sky or to the ground, but this fire chased them horizontally. However, they didn't dare to be sure. What if the other party could control the flames to chase them? This was very possible. An unforgettable scene appeared in the sky. Green flames. Green flames filled the sky, covering the sun. The sky within a radius of several kilometers was completely covered by the green flames. The dazzling green light illuminated the sky. Even Deyang City, which was several kilometers away, was alarmed. Some of the commoners climbed onto the roofs of tall buildings. Many of them squeezed out of the city to see the spectacle in the distant sky. Below the green flames, among the spectators, those with low cultivation could no longer bear it. Although the green flames above and below were separated by more than 100 meters, if they continued to roast like this, how could they bear it? Chapter 498. However, the first to suffer were the remote mountains and forests around them. How could they withstand the power of the blue fire? Although they did not come into direct contact with the fire, it did not take long for them to catch fire. The vegetation in the deep mountains and forests was lush, and the fire was also monstrous. The birds could not fly, and the beasts could not escape from the disaster. They were swallowed by the merciless fire. The blue fire in the sky was dazzling, and the red fire on the ground was emitting thick black smoke. The blue fire in the sky was dazzling, and the red fire on the ground was emitting thick black smoke. The place where the battle was being watched became a cage in the sea of fire. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan Du, who were panting at the two ends of the sea of fire, were shocked by the scene in the sky and on the ground. How did this happen? The two did not know that the place where the battle was being watched was even more chaotic. There were more than 3,000 people. People were going to die. If they wanted to escape, only a few people with high cultivation were confident that they could break out of this endless sea of fire. Of course, they had to escape from the ordinary fire that was close to the ground. However, most of the people who came to watch the fun had not reached the crossing calamity stage. Those who were below the crossing calamity stage, including those who were in the late nascent soul stage, were not confident that they could escape from this mountain of fire that stretched for dozens of miles. It was even more impossible to escape from the sky, because they were blocked by the blue fire. Yu Qianqiu, who was in the blue flame, slightly straightened out the chaotic aura in his chest. He stood on a black flying sword with a calm face. He floated out of the blue flamed sea and looked around. He didn't see the two fellows who had injured him. He immediately activated his true essence and shouted, "Guan Zhongkai, Yulan Du, get out here, you two!" His voice shook the surroundings, and the people below could hear it more clearly. When it fell into Guan Zhongkai and Yulan Du's ears, it was almost inaudible. However, with their cultivation, they could still hear what it was. Their expressions twitched, and they looked at the vast sea of fire at the same time. They secretly cursed, "Only a ghost would go. There is no way to fight this fight. With our cultivation, we are not afraid of you, but we are afraid of this blue sea of fire. What if you turn this sea of fire into dumplings after we run over? Can we still run out of this place?" The two of them knew that they didn't have the ability to teleport a dozen more times. They really couldn't move anymore. "It's not that I don't want to let you go, but Guan Zhongkai thinks that your life and death have nothing to do with him. He's clearly hinting me to burn you to death." "Fine, I'll let him get what he wants." "No, Mr. Yu, please spare us, Mr. Yu, please have mercy." The panicked shouts from below became a mess. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "Let me tell you, because of Guan Zhongkai's words, I've already sealed the area within a radius of more than 10 miles with my blue fire. Flies can't fly out, and ants can't crawl out of holes. Even those at the end of the passing tribulation will have to obediently wait for death. If you want to get out, curse Guan Zhongkai and Yulan out, then I'll let you go. Otherwise, all of you will die." Hearing this, the dozens of passing tribulation stage cultivators who wanted to see the result were instantly dumbfounded. They quickly raised their aura shields and flew through the sea of fire on the ground. It didn't take them long to cover the distance of more than 10 miles. When they reached the end, they found that it was just as Yu Qianqiu had said. The blue fire had sealed the area from top to bottom, and it seemed to be gradually shrinking. Looking at the deep blue wall of fire, it was probably not an ordinary thick wall. It was probably impossible to break out. They didn't dare to take the risk, so they turned around and flew back. Because going back and forth was equivalent to doubling the distance, they felt that they couldn't bear the roasting. When the crowd saw them flying back, they didn't need to ask to know the result was just as Yu Qianqiu had said. One of the returning cultivators at the end of the passing tribulation stage stomped his feet and said, "Guan Zhongkai, why don't you just shut up if you don't want to talk? That voice of yours is going to kill us." Then he smiled bitterly and shook his head at the crowd, saying, "The fire barrier is slowly shrinking. Once it closes in, we will definitely die." They immediately panicked and begged Yu Qianqiu to show mercy. "What do you think? Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, I have always been a merciful person. The people who harmed you are actually Guan Zhongkai and Yulandu. Scold them hard, at least 100 times harder than when you scolded me. Scold those two cowards until they come out and fight me to the death. If I die, you will naturally be saved. If they die, I promise I will let you go. Damn it, why are you still hesitating? Be careful, or I will roast you like suckling pigs. Unexpectedly, the one who scolded first was the cultivator at the end of the passing tribulation stage who had just left and came back stamping his feet. He roared, Guan Zhongkai, I am third brother Axayan. If you want to fight, then fight. If you don't want to fight, then come out and admit defeat. Don't King harm us. If you don't come out, when I have the chance to go out, I will twist your head off and use it as a urinal. Chapter 499. These words were quite shocking. Plus, his cultivation level was quite high, so his voice was naturally loud. Who was third brother Axayan? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He did not expect that there would be such a powerful guy among his hostages. Although he didn't know who third brother Axayan was, Nongzhu had told him about Guan Zhongkai's identity. Sikongju, the eldest disciple of Yin Baikong, a late divine transformation expert, was also an early divine transformation expert, and Guan Zhongkai was his disciple. This meant that Guan Zhongkai was Yin Baikong's favorite disciple. But this third brother Axayan actually dared to say that he would use Guan Zhongkai's head as a urinal. Obviously, he was not afraid of Guan Zhongkai. Maybe he was even more powerful than Guan Zhongkai. Guan Zhongkai, who was at the end of the sea of fire, was startled. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and said to himself, Third brother Axayan. Why is he here? I didn't see him at the start. Third brother Axayan is also inside. Yulan, who was at the other end, said to himself with a bitter smile, Guan Zhongkai, why did you drag me into this? Things are getting out of hand now. He said this, forgetting his own greed. Looking at the mountain fire that was gradually spreading into the distance, the great forest was billowing with thick smoke. Yu Qianqiu did not know who third brother Axayan was, but the two of them did. One of the four great men in the cultivation world, the world's #1 miracle doctor, the world's #1 beauty, a mid-stage divine transformation cultivator, and the master of Lingfang Valley. Lu Yanqing was his master. Third brother Axayan had a total of 9 brothers. The strangest thing was that all 9 of them were born from the same mother. It was rare for one person to be pregnant with 9 twins at the same time. Because of this, the mother almost lost her life. Fortunately, she met Lu Yanqing, the world's #1 miracle doctor, and her life was saved. When the 9 brothers were born, their bodies were weak and their lives were hanging by a thread. It was Lu Yanqing who saved their lives. After that, Lu Yanqing found out that all 9 brothers were talented in cultivation. It was really a rare thing, so she took all 9 brothers as her disciples. After the 9 of them were born, although they were arranged according to the order of birth, their cultivation aptitude did not follow this order. The youngest of the 3, 9th elder Axayan, was extremely talented and had already reached the early stage of soul formation. Looking at his cultivation speed, he actually had the potential to catch up to his master. The other 8 had also reached the end of the tribulation transcendence stage. Of course, this was not unrelated to the elixir that Lu Yanqing had refined. The 9 brothers always fought together. When one was bullied, the other 8 would take revenge together. Anyone who had anything to do with them would have a headache because of them. He was not afraid of these 9 people, but of their master, Lu Yanqing. As one of the 4 eccentrics, none of them were to be trifled with. Bai Changchun, who was ranked first, had an earth-shattering cultivation. No one dared to provoke him. Wen Lanfeng, who was ranked second, also had a frighteningly high cultivation. Except for Bai Changchun, no one was a match for him. Ancestor Nan Ming, who was ranked third, and Lu Yanqing, who was ranked fourth, although their cultivation was not very high, there were few in the world who dared to not give them face. People who begged them were like ducks. If they really wanted to offend these two, they did not need to do it themselves. They just needed to casually release the news. Most importantly, Lu Yanqing had a famous protector. It was one of the four eccentrics, Wen Lanfeng, who was ranked second in the world in cultivation. Who dared to bully Lu Yanqing? Wen Lanfeng did not even need to speak for her to vent his anger. How many people in the world dared to provoke Lu Yanqing? At the same time, what was the difference between provoking the 9 Xan brothers and provoking Lu Yanqing? Therefore, when he heard third elder Xan scolding, Guan Zhongkai's forehead was full of sweat. Not to mention him, even his grandmaster Yin Baikong had to be cautious. But no matter how afraid he was, it was not as important as his own life. If he rushed into this blue sea of fire, he could not guarantee that he would be able to come out. He immediately shouted, "Brother Xan, I have no enmity with you. You can't blame me. This has nothing to do with me. The fire was set by that guy. You should ask him to let you out." As soon as he said this, he heard third elder Xan shout, "Bullsh *t. If it's not your business, then whose business is it?" Two late-stage tribulation transcendents shamelessly jumped out to fight a nascent soul stage. Halfway through the fight, they stopped. If you don't want to fight, then just admit defeat. People scolded you for a long time and you did not come out. Do you have any shame? Let me tell you, you can either come over and continue fighting or admit defeat. You dare to run. If you kill me, I guarantee that even if you hide in the cornucopia, I will drag you out. No one can protect you. Guan Zhongkai was depressed. He did not know what to say. Regardless of whether third brother Xan scolded him or not, there was one thing that he was right about. If he really ran away and caused the death of this fellow, even if he hid in the World Commerce's headquarters cornucopia, the people of Spirit Fang Valley would still be able to find him. He was very clear about Grandmaster Yin Baikong's character. He bullied the weak and feared the strong. Moreover, there were many disciples and grand disciples in the late stage of tribulation transcendence. He would not offend Spirit Fang Valley for him and ruin the big plan. It was very likely that he would come out and apologize. It was really difficult to make a decision. He could not run away. If he went over now, he would be afraid of this deadly sea of fire. If he admitted defeat, he would not be able to raise his head in the cultivation world. What the f***ck is this? Guan Zhongkai laughed at himself. The reason why he jumped out to oppose Yu Qianqiu was because he heard that Yu Qianqiu killed his junior martial uncle who was also in the late stage of tribulation transcendence in the Chinese cultivation world. In fact, it was not for revenge. He just wanted to please Grandmaster Yin Baikong. Who would have thought that after just a few moves, it would become like this? Of course, Yu Qianqiu's 2 treasured sabers were also the reason why he made a move. On the other side, Yu Lan's intestines were green with regret. She sighed repeatedly and simply continued to maintain her silence. Even with Guan Zhongkai's background, he was afraid of third brother Xan, let alone him. Yu Qianqiu, who was above the sea of fire, was happy. From the words of the two, it seemed that Guan Zhongkai was really afraid of this guy. He immediately shouted, "Good scolding. Everyone else, start scolding too. Don't worry, with so many people scolding together, he won't be able to tell who is who. Don't be afraid of his revenge." He then added, "I forgot to tell everyone, the fire barrier is slowly closing in. We don't have much time left. Hurry up and scold." These words were well said. Everyone did not dare to scold too much because they were afraid that they would not be able to escape from Guan Zhongkai's revenge. After being reminded, everyone did not hold back and scolded loudly with righteous indignation. Guan Zhongkai, you cowardly thing, come out, Yulan Du, shameless villain, if you don't have the guts, why did you come out and throw it? More than 2,000 people were shouting angrily because hundreds of them had already fallen. It was really noisy. They were scolding all kinds of things, much more ruthless than when they were scolding Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, who was above the sea of fire, grabbed a handful of qi recovery pills and stuffed them into his mouth. He folded his arms and chewed slowly. His expression was not good, and he was calculating in his mind. Since he was in the cultivation world, he could not spit out blood for nothing. Otherwise, everyone would bully him in the future. He wanted to see what those two guys were going to do. If they came, he would kill them. If they didn't, he could only let his subordinates suffer a little. If they wanted to cause trouble, they might as well make it bigger. People died every day, it was just a matter of how many people died. Nongzhu shook her head and sighed. A group of people were scolding Yu Qianqiu not long ago, and now they were helping Yu Qianqiu to scold people. Today's incident was considered to be a worthwhile trip. It was just that her ears were a little numb from the noise, when Rui and Wenbai looked at each other speechlessly. How did things turn out this way? Guan Zhongkai and Yulan were really unlucky. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan, who were on the other end of the sea of fire, turned red and white. It would be a lie to say that they could not hear it. After being scolded like this, even if they were fine, they would have to avoid going out in the cultivation world in the future. Guan Zhongkai was infuriated when he suddenly heard the sound of rushing wind behind him. He turned his head and saw Mi Ruhai and Mi Ruchuan. His expression relaxed slightly. So it's Brother Guan. What's going on? Why? Mi Ruhai stopped halfway through his sentence. There was endless scolding coming from the sea of fire. There were all kinds of scolding, and the scolding was abnormally nasty. When the two of them noticed the abnormality, they were worried about their boss's safety, so they rushed over together. Who knew they would hear this? After looking at each other, they frowned when they saw Fangjing's constantly expanding mountain fire. Mi Ruhai said in a deep voice, so many people are scolding you and Yulan. Brother Guan, could this sea of fire be caused by both you and Yulan? Brother Mi, don't misunderstand. How could I casually set off such a huge fire in Senior Hua's territory? Furthermore, it's near Daong City. Guan Zhongkai waved his hands immediately. He was already in trouble, so how could he provoke Hua Zongming? What exactly happened? Mi Ruhai asked with a frown. I've been unlucky for 8 lifetimes. I've encountered a jinx. How unlucky? Guan Zhongkai recounted the situation with a frown. The two brothers were dumbfounded. Their boss had come out to entertain the guests, and they had been staying in the palace. They never expected Yu Qianqiu to have already caused such a huge commotion. After coming to his senses, Mi Ruchuan said anxiously, Brother Guan, are you saying that my brother is still in the sea of fire? Guan Zhongkai's eyes lit up when he heard that. He nodded and said, that's right. Mi Russian is indeed inside. Why don't you two force Yu Qianqiu to release him? Mi Ruchuan immediately panicked when he heard that. He turned around and shouted, second brother, let's go and save big brother. After that, he was about to leave. Wait. Mi Ruhai pulled him back and stared at Guan Zhongkai with a burning gaze. The latter avoided his gaze guiltily. He thought to himself that he was muddle-headed just now. He shouldn't have explained the situation so clearly. Otherwise, he could have used the two of them to force Yu Qianqiu. Second brother, why are you still hesitating? Big brother is in danger. Mi Ruchuan said anxiously. Mi Ruhai said in a deep voice, didn't you hear what Brother Guan said just now? Yu Qianqiu held the lives of more than 3,000 people hostage. Big brother isn't the only one. If you and I barge in blindly and can force Yu Qianqiu to release him, it'll naturally be good. We can also solve the problem for Brother Guan. If we force Yu Qianqiu into a corner and kill ourselves together, then Big Brother and the 3,000 people would have died in vain. This responsibility isn't something you and I can bear. Chapter 500. The meaning in his words was clear. Mi Ruchuan, who was in a panic, immediately realized and said angrily, Guan Zhongkai, you want to use us two brothers. Let me tell you, if anything happens to my big brother, no matter how powerful your World Chamber of Commerce is, don't even think about leaving Daong Kingdom. Misunderstanding, there's no such thing. Guan Zhongkai smiled apologetically. His mouth was even more bitter than eating yellow lotus. The shock in Mi Ruhai's eyes did not fade away as he watched the sea of green flames that was slowly shrinking. Although the cultivators were used to seeing strange things, the scene was indeed spectacular. Mi Ruhai turned around and stared at Guan Zhongkai with his eagle-like eyes. He said in a deep voice, Brother Guan, there are several thousand people cursing and swearing non-stop. You can't hide here. You have to solve it. Look at the cursing. If you don't come out, then there's no other way. Nothing can happen to my big brother. The last sentence was already faintly overbearing. Guan Zhongkai narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, Mi Ruhai, are you threatening me? As soon as he said this, Mi Ruchuan appeared behind him with a whoosh. The two brothers sandwiched him in the middle. If there was any disagreement, the two would probably fight. Brother Guan is thinking too much. Mi Ruhai said unhurriedly, Yu Qianqiu forced you to hide here and not go over. This shows that the power of this sea of fire is extraordinary. To put it bluntly, you may die if you go, am I right? Seeing that Guan Zhongkai's face was calm and did not speak, he continued expressionlessly, but if you just hide like this, once something happens to third brother Xian, and Lu Yanqing finds Yin Bai Kong, I'm afraid that your grandmaster will not let you go. In my opinion, sometimes life is more important than face. Admitting defeat is also a way out. Brother Guan. Don't hesitate anymore, make a prompt decision. Guan Zhongkai looked back at Mi Russian behind him. He knew that Mi Ruhai's words were to use peaceful means before resorting to force. If he didn't agree, Mi Ruhai would probably fight. Even if they didn't kill him, at least they wouldn't let him go. Just now, he had used teleportation more than a dozen times in a row, consuming a lot of his true essence. In addition, his flying sword artifact was also destroyed. He estimated that his chances of escaping from the hands of these two people were not high. After pondering for a while, Guan Zhongkai said in a deep voice, Thank you for your advice, Brother Mi. I will definitely remember this kindness and repay it in the future. The meaning in his words was worth pondering. Mi Ruhai smiled faintly, stepped aside, and made a gesture of invitation towards the sea of fire. Guan Zhongkai's chest heaved. He was forced into a corner. Gritting his teeth, he roared, Yu Qianqiu, for the sake of the 3,000 fellow Taoists in the cultivation world, I admit defeat. Put away the fire and let them go. The voices under the sea of fire stopped. Although everyone was cursing until their mouths were dry, their faces were filled with surprise. They were just waiting for Yu Qianqiu to release them. Yu Qianqiu, who was standing on his sword above the sea of fire, was stunned when he heard Guan Zhongkai's words. He didn't expect Guan Zhongkai to admit defeat. How could he do that? He hadn't even taken revenge for being injured. Yulan, who was on the other side of the sea of fire, also found it hard to believe, but Guan Zhongkai's voice confirmed it. He heaved a sigh of relief. Since Guan Zhongkai had admitted defeat, what else could he say? If word got out, Guan Zhongkai would be even more humiliated than him. He immediately shouted, For the sake of the 3,000 fellow Taoists in the cultivation world, I, Yulan, also admit defeat. Yu Qianqiu sneered. You want to let things go like this after beating me up? He roared, don't drag out the 3,000 fellow Taoists in the cultivation world to gain face. You know what you are. Also, I don't know what admitting defeat means. As soon as he said that, the people below were in chaos. They all thought that Yu Qianqiu was going to go back on his words. Third Xan, who was in the crowd, glared and roared, Guan Zhongkai, Yulan, will you die if you speak clearly? Yulan was a little better. After all, she was just following along. However, Guan Zhongkai was so angry that he gritted his teeth and roared, Third Xan, I've already said it. It's that brat who didn't follow the rules. Third Xan, don't go too far. Do you really think that the World Commerce Association is afraid of your Lingfang Valley? Third Xan immediately shouted back, stop bullsh** ting. If you admit defeat, admit it openly. Don't beat around the bush. If the two of you admit defeat and Yu Qianqiu still dares to not let go, us brothers will be the first to not let him go. It has nothing to do with the two of you. Guan Zhongkai had always thought of himself as smart. He didn't expect that the people he met today were all playing tough with him. They didn't give him any leeway at all. He was so angry that his body trembled. Mi Ruhai smiled faintly and said, Brother Mi, Third Xan is right. We've already said it like this. Why do you still care about the shivering? There's nothing wrong with making things clear. Mi Ruhai. Guan Zhongkai glared at him. He was so angry that he laughed and said good a few times. He then roared, I admit defeat. Then he immediately turned around and flew away. Mi Ruchuan looked back and frowned, Second brother, are we letting him go just like this? He seems to hate us. Why don't we take this chance to? Mi Ruhai waved his hand and interrupted, don't care about him. The last three words have already made the World Commerce Association lose face. There's no need for us to do anything. Someone will naturally take care of him. I admit defeat. Yulan Dou's voice also came faintly. Everyone under the sea of fire fell silent again. They were waiting for Yu Qianqiu's movement. If he still found an excuse, it would mean that he was deliberately trying to kill everyone. Damn it! Coward! Yu Qianqiu spat out a mouthful of saliva. He didn't think that they would be able to swallow their anger after being so overbearing. The other party directly shouted, I admit defeat. If he still didn't let it go, he wouldn't be able to show his face in the various countries in the future. They wouldn't let him go. I'll settle the score with you two bastards later. Yu Qianqiu slightly calmed the anger in his chest. He floated in the air and opened his arms. The azure flames quickly shrunk with him as the center and returned in an instant. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu discovered that the mountains below were a complete mess and the fire was still spreading. Finally seeing the light of day again, the group of people below finally felt relieved. Looking at Yu Qianqiu in the air, he quickly swooped down on his sword after withdrawing the azure flames. With a slanted drift, he charged into the raging flames burning in the mountains. A miraculous scene appeared. Wherever Yu Qianqiu went, the flames would reach out and wrap around him. In the blink of an eye, the flames would be sucked into his body. Not even a spark could be seen. Within a radius of several kilometers, Yu Qianqiu's figure could be seen flying on his sword. At this moment, everyone finally understood what Yu Qianqiu was doing. So he was extinguishing the fire. Everyone muttered. This guy was like a madman just now, using so many people's lives as a threat, but now he was doing such a thing. It seemed like he was just threatening Guan Zhongkai and Yulan Dou, and wouldn't really do anything. Everyone was just shocked. This was just their wishful thinking, but they didn't know that Yu Qianqiu was not so kind. He had already made up his mind to kill all these people who had insulted him. If it weren't for Guan Zhongkai and Yulan Dou's retreat, this group of people would probably be crying and screaming now. In fact, Yu Qianqiu did not know why he did such a strenuous and unrewarding thing, but he did it anyway. It took nearly an hour to completely extinguish all the mountain flames. When he looked back, the surroundings were already scorched black. He returned on his sword. After landing, he glanced at everyone coldly. The group of people subconsciously stepped back, all of them were a little afraid of him. They had seen this guy kill more than a dozen people in a row, even those in the final stage of the heavens test. Especially the scene where he fought with Chu Dingfang, it would be strange if they were not afraid. Now, no one would say anything. Thousands of people were very quiet, watching him pick up a few storage bags on the ground. Of course, there were also people who were not afraid of him, and Third Axian was one of them. He approached, first bowed to Nongzhu and Wenrui, and then shouted to Yu Qianqiu, "Boy, you've got guts. How dare you treat the lives of thousands of people as a game?" Yu Qianqiu cast a glance at him. He looked exactly like a strong farmer, and his attire was also similar. His aura was similar to old ancestor Nan Ming. He asked indifferently, "Are you Third Axian?" Third Axian was stunned, and then nodded, "Yes, I am Third Axian." "Why, is there a problem?" Without saying anything, Yu Qianqiu took out a storage bag and threw it on the ground, saying, "Let's begin." Third Axian was stunned, and asked, "What for?" "Look at you, you don't seem to be convinced." "The matter is not over yet, I will accept any challenge," Yu Qianqiu said. "Ah." Third Axian paused, and then waved his hand with a bitter smile, "Don't think too much. I'm not much stronger than Guan Zhongkai, I can't withstand your monstrous fire." "Then what do you mean?" Yu Qianqiu asked. On the surface, he was still cold, but in his heart, he admired this Third Axian. At least he was not so hypocritical. "Nothing else, I just want to have a drink or two with you. I don't know if you will give me face." Third Axian laughed. "Let's talk after I finish." Yu Qianqiu looked around, and said in a deep voice, "Who else is not convinced? Come at me, I, Yu Qianqiu, will accept you at any time. I think that's it for today. If anyone still wants to fight, fight after leaving Daong Kingdom." Mi Russian said expressionlessly. The three brothers met up and stood together, and their eyes swept across the crowd. On the surface, his words sounded like he did not welcome the crowd to cause trouble in Daong Kingdom, but in fact, he wanted to leave a fig leaf for the other countries. Who on the scene was confident that they could defeat Yu Qianqiu? Could it be that they were really going to be beaten by him to the point where no one else could participate? How embarrassing would that be? "Those who came with me before, if you still want to return to Daong Palace, you might as well follow me back. That way, you can avoid some unnecessary trouble." Mi Russian said this, and the three brothers flew away together. The few hundred people who came out also followed. Yu Qianqiu and the others were no exception. As for the rest of the people, including those who had fainted from the high temperature and were rescued, they also left. In the blink of an eye, the place became empty, the group of people returned to the hall of Daong Palace, and it was much quieter. Yu Qianqiu found that Third Axian, who was originally not in the crowd, also came, and followed him. Chapter 501. After the green flames in the distant sky disappeared, the people of Daong City felt that it was strange, but they gradually lost interest. After all, it was too far away, and they did not know what had happened. It was just another topic of conversation. The entire Daong City quickly returned to peace, and the people's interest shifted back to the martial arts competition. The excitement of the rich and powerful easily attracted the attention of the common people. On the drill ground of the palace, more than 10 arenas were competing at the same time. Zhang Peng was in the Baiwan nation's lineup, and he had already fought 5 matches. Ordinary children of rich and powerful families who practiced martial arts were no match for him. He was an old general who had fought on the battlefield, and his speed and eyesight after cultivation were far superior to mortals. He did not want to waste time with those mortals, so he beat his opponents to the ground with a few punches and kicks. He suppressed his cultivation, or else someone would die. After he left the arena, he returned to the Baiwan nation's lineup and felt bored. He was tall, but he looked listless. Although he kept a low profile, his moves were too conspicuous. Not only did he attract the attention of the competitors from various countries, but he also alerted the spies in the palace. The news quickly reached Zhao Heng's ears in the imperial study, Zhangpeng. Zhao Heng looked at the eunuch in shock. The old eunuch with white hair on his temples smiled and said, "Master, you worry too much. This Zhangpeng is not Zhangpeng from Huaxia nation, but the youngest son of an old general from Baiwan nation. Because he cannot inherit the title of nobility, he came to Daong nation to find a way out." Zhao Heng nodded and asked, "You said that he won 5 matches in a row, and he did not use more than 3 moves in any of them. With such good skills, even if he cannot inherit the title of nobility in Baiwan nation, can't he find a good way out?" "Master, you know the situation in Baiwan nation. It is normal for brothers to kill each other. I think it is because of this that he came to Daong nation," the old eunuch said respectfully. Zhao Heng thought for a while and did not say much. He only ordered, "Pay close attention to this person. If he is really a talent, try to recruit him." The same news quickly spread to the Lu Xiang house in the West Palace courtyard. The 3 sisters had also been paying attention to the news of the competition. When they heard that there was an outstanding figure called Zhangpeng, the 3 sisters looked at each other in dismay. How could there be such a coincidence? The eldest sister, Xiao Rongxiang, hurriedly asked the servant who relayed the news about Zhangpeng's origins. After learning that he was from Baiwan nation, the 3 of them heaved a sigh of relief. None of the hundreds of cultivators in the side hall spoke a word. All of them were looking at Yu Qianqiu. Everyone knew that after today's battles, Yu Qianqiu's name would be well known in the cultivation world. Yu Qianqiu and Axian Lao San were staring at each other. What made Yu Qianqiu depressed was that wherever he went, Yu Qianqiu would follow him. Whenever he sat down, Yu Qianqiu would sit beside him, smiling foolishly. How disgusting! Normally, other cultivators were not allowed to enter the palace, but the 3 Mi brothers obviously turned a blind eye to this guy. No one else had any objections either. It seemed that he really had some background. "Xan Lao San, why do you keep following me?" Yu Qianqiu finally couldn't stand it anymore and asked impatiently. Xan Lao San was a little puzzled and said, "Didn't we agree? I'll buy you a drink." "I don't think I agreed." Yu Qianqiu snorted. Xan Lao San waved his hand and said, "It's okay. It's not too late to agree now." Nongzhu, who had been quietly watching the show, giggled. She also didn't know why Axian Lao San kept following Yu Qianqiu, but it didn't stop her from watching the show. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "There are so many people here. Why do you want to drink with me? What's the use of so many people? Just set a fire and it'll be over." Xan Lao San said loudly. Everyone in the room blushed at his words. Ah. Yu Qianqiu thought to himself, this guy is a little heartless, but so many people are afraid of him. He paused and asked, "Xan Lao San, I don't drink with people I don't know for no reason. What's your background?" "You don't even know my background." Xan Lao San acted as if he had heard something unbelievable. Yu Qianqiu showed a look of disdain and said, "You don't look like a spirit-severing expert." Xan Lao San ignored his sarcasm and patted his chest. He said proudly, "I come from Lingfang Valley. My master is the valley master of Lingfang Valley." Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a moment, then his eyes lit up and said, "Your master is the world's most beautiful woman, Lu Yanqing. What do you want?" Xan Laosan immediately became alert. He had seen this person's eyes and tone in many people who had evil intentions towards his master. He. It's nothing, just casually asking. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly. But this guy kept staring at him. He was full of thoughts. Maybe he had some ulterior motives. At this moment, outside the hall, Mi Russian walked in. He cupped his hands towards the crowd and said, "Everyone, today's competition ends here. We have already selected 100 winners from each country, and they will continue to compete in the next few days." After saying this, he stopped. His meaning was obvious, he was sending the guests off. No one wanted to stay here for a long time. Not only were they not allowed to walk around, they were also not allowed to watch the competition. Of course, everyone understood that this was because they were afraid that the cultivators would secretly help the contestants of their country and interfere with the fairness of the competition. The group of people began to disperse and walked out of the side hall, returning to their respective protected targets. Among the contestants, some were happy and some were worried. Those who were happy were naturally successful, and those who were worried were naturally eliminated. After returning to Baiwan, everyone got on the carriage and went back. In the carriage, Yu Qianqiu saw Zhang Peng's dejected look and asked curiously, "Zhang Peng, what's wrong? Is there anyone who is your match?" "No, I won 5 matches in a row." Zhang Peng said sullenly and then smiled bitterly, "Master, can we not compete? It's really boring." Yu Qianqiu looked at Nongzhu and Furong in the carriage and said, "Let's talk about it later." After the group of people returned to Baiwan's embassy, they had just entered the small courtyard when they suddenly saw a person flashing through the air. Nongzhu, who was the fastest to react, grabbed the person's neck before he even landed. This person was none other than third brother Xan. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. This guy actually followed them here. Zhang Peng looked puzzled, not knowing who this person was. Third brother Xan, whose face was red from being choked, said intermittently, "Senior Nongzhu, please have mercy." Nongzhu sneered, "Third brother Xan, you really don't want face when I'm trying to save you. You actually dared to break into my residence without permission. Others might be afraid of your master, but I'm not. Believe it or not, if I cripple you, your master will at most scold me." After that, she threw him aside and rolled on the ground a few times. Yu Qianqiu secretly clicked his tongue. In the hands of a soul-forming cultivator, a cultivator at the late stage of crossing heaven's tribulation was like a chicken. It was very difficult for him to defeat a cultivator at the late stage of crossing heaven's tribulation. This was the gap between them. Third brother Xan gritted his teeth and got up. He bowed and apologized to Nongzhu. It was true that third brother Xan and his brothers could do whatever they wanted in the cultivation world because of their master, but there were indeed people they were afraid of. Needless to say, there was the most powerful master in the world who almost flattened Lingfang Valley. Mr. Nongzhu was also someone they could not afford to offend. If he taught them a lesson, their master would not say anything. Moreover, Wen Lanfeng would not necessarily look for Nongzhu to settle scores with. "Tell me, what are you doing here?" Nongzhu shouted. Third brother Xan answered obediently, "Senior, I'm here to have a drink with him." He pointed at Yu Qianqiu. "Don't talk nonsense with me." Nongzhu glared at him and shouted, "Get out of here." Third brother Xan trembled in fear. Before he could turn around, he saw Wen Rui teleporting. Wen Rui glanced at third brother Xan and said to Nongzhu anxiously, "Sir, I have to go back to Baiwan country. I'm afraid I can't accompany you." Nongzhu frowned and said, "What's wrong? You look so anxious. Did something happen in Baiwan country?" The others also looked at him. When Rui paused and shook his head, to tell you the truth, our ancestor has come out of seclusion. Ah! Nongju and third brother Xayan, who was secretly eavesdropping, screamed at the same time. Furong and Zhongping did not know who they were. Yu Qianzhou asked suspiciously, has Senior Wen Lanfeng come out of seclusion? Wen Rui nodded silently. Third brother Xayan, on the other hand, had teleported away with a swished sound. He was suspected of informing Wen Rui. Nongju smiled bitterly, this is troublesome. Wen Lanfeng, don't be impulsive. Then she pointed at Wen Rui and said anxiously, Wen Rui, go back as soon as possible and find a way to stop Wen Lanfeng. Don't let him go to the demon domain now. Old Bai has urgent matters to attend to. If he goes there now, he will be courting death. Furong and Zhongpeng looked at each other and did not know what they were talking about. Yu Qianzhou understood. He knew that Wen Lanfeng went into seclusion after being defeated by Master. Now that he came out, he would probably go to Master to fight again. Wen Rui nodded and turned around. He turned back and said with a solemn expression, Sir, I have something to ask you. I hope you can tell me the truth. Say it. Nongju frowned and did not know what he was hesitating about. Wen Rui was puzzled, our ancestor has been in seclusion for 100 years. When he comes out, his cultivation must have improved greatly. But from what you said, do you still think that our ancestor is no match for Bai Changchun? How can a grain of rice compete with the bright moon? Nongju sighed and said, ordinary experts at the late stage of transforming spirit realm, no matter how high their cultivation is, can make people feel a bottom line. But Bai Changchun always gets stronger when he meets strong opponents. His cultivation is so profound that it is unfathomable. He is a powerful existence that cannot be judged by common sense. Although I don't know how high Wen Lanfeng's cultivation is after coming out of seclusion, I know that if he provokes Bai Changchun again, he will lose his life. Chapter 502. Wen Rui's face turned pale in an instant. He said, is Bai Changchun invincible forever? Alas! Nongju patted him on the shoulder and said, Bai Changchun didn't summon Wen Lanfeng because you saw the battle in the East Sea. But let me tell you, Bai Changchun didn't do his best at all. When you go back, just tell him the scene of the battle, and Wen Lanfeng will retreat. Go quickly. You will regret it if you are late. Thank you for your advice. Wen Rui bowed deeply. He understood that there was no successor for the Wen family. His cultivation was not enough to withstand the wind and rain for the Wen family. Once the ancestor died, the whole Wen family would suffer a disaster. After saying his thanks, he quickly disappeared. There was a sound of rapid flying in the air. The yard was quiet for a while. Although Furong and Zhongping did not know the reason, they could tell that it must be a tricky matter. Yu Qianzhou asked, will Wen Lanfeng really go to my master after he finishes his closed-door training? Zhongpeng was shocked. No matter how stupid he was, he could tell that his grandmaster was an invincible existence. For a moment, he stood there silently with a surge of emotions. Nongju shook her head and said with a wry smile, I really don't know what to say about Wen Lanfeng. He is obviously a genius, but he is deeply in love. You can't imagine how obsessed he is with Liu Yanqing. For Liu Yanqing, he will definitely fight with your master after he finishes his closed-door training. But your master is now at the critical moment of refining the spirit treasure. If Wen Lanfeng goes now, I'm afraid your master will not be merciful anymore. Yu Qianzhou smiled and also felt that this kind of person was very interesting. He asked, doesn't Wen Lanfeng know how to run when he can't win? Nongju looked at him with deep meaning and sighed, you haven't seen what your master is like when he really fights, so you don't know how terrible he is. Run. If Wen Lanfeng angers your master, where can he run to? Yu Qianzhou was speechless. He had never seen what his master was like when he fought. He thought about it and asked, does Lu Yanqing know how to persuade him? Are you willing to see him take the risk? Hearing this, Nongzhu looked around and found that Axayan Lao San was nowhere to be seen. She smiled bitterly and said, if he knew the news, he would probably advise me. I hope third brother Axayan can send the news back in time. What I fear is that when Lan Feng will head straight for the Yao region the moment he comes out from his cultivation retreat. That would be interesting, Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. That's why I can't stay here any longer. I have to rush back to the demon ghost territory. I hope I still have a chance to stop this from happening. Nongzhu suddenly stared at Furong, who was blinking her eyes, and said, little girl, come with me. Furong was stunned and weakly asked, where are we going? You didn't tell her. Nongzhu turned around and asked. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head in embarrassment. He walked over and held Furong's shoulder. Furong, it's like this. Since you're with me now, you should at least pay your respects to my master. Go with Senior Nongzhu. Before he could finish, Furong grabbed his arm and asked nervously, you don't want me anymore? Are you kicking me out? Don't kick me out, please. Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly felt pain, but a warm smile hung on his face. He gently pulled Furong into his arms, gently patted her back, and said, silly girl, how could I not want you? I'm afraid that one day you won't want me anymore. I won't. I want to be with you for the rest of my life. Furong buried her head in his arms and tightened her hands around his waist. Listen to me. Yu Qianqiu gently pushed her away and said very seriously, as a disciple, I feel very guilty that I can't be filial to my master. Since you're my woman, you have the responsibility to be filial to my master. Senior Nongzhu is my master's close friend. He will take you to my master. I've talked to Senior Nongzhu. If there's a chance, he will take you to his purple bamboo forest in the South Sea. There are many beautiful purple bamboos there. I'll go to see you then. Furong's face was full of reluctance, but she slowly lowered her head and said softly, I know. Nongzhu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a strange expression. She didn't expect this guy to have such a warm side. He was obviously afraid that this girl would be in danger with him, but he still tried to coax her. She couldn't help but tease him by sending a voice transmission, boy, is this a white lie? Yu Qianqiu didn't bother to pay attention to him. He gently lifted Furong's face and slowly took off the human skin mask on her face. He shook it in his hand and said, when I miss you, I'll take out your face and have a look. When I'm free, I'll go to see you immediately. After revealing her original face, Furong blushed after hearing these words of love. She looked at Nongzhu and Zhangping with embarrassment. Master is so mushy. Zhangping shuddered and turned around. Nongzhu raised her eyebrows and thought to herself, I knew it. I thought there was something wrong with this guy's appreciation ability. It turns out that he is also a stunning beauty, but not as beautiful as my Z. All right. You two don't have to talk about love anymore. Yu Qianqiu, before I leave, I have something to tell you. Nongzhu's words broke up the affectionate couple. Yu Qianqiu came over and bowed respectfully. He said, Senior, please say it. I'm all ears. Nongzhu felt a little uncomfortable when she heard these words. She guessed that this guy had changed. His words were so polite that they were mushy. She glanced at Furong behind him and immediately understood. This guy was still the same. He pretended to be obedient when he needed help. Now was not the time to argue with him. She said with a serious expression, Yu Qianqiu, I have to remind you. Don't go too far when you stir up trouble here. Experts in the soul formation stage are not like those cultivators you've met. When they fight, it's as simple as releasing two flying swords. At this stage, they fight with lightning. It's not something you can withstand with your current cultivation, so you'd better not provoke them. Don't think that your blue fire is very powerful. It can deal with those in the crossing calamity stage, but it's useless against those in the soul formation stage. You've tried it with me in the South Sea. You should know that the blue fire has no effect on me. You're on your own now. Thank you for your advice. I'll keep it in mind. Yu Qianqiu bowed. He looked very respectful, but no one could tell what he was thinking. Let's go, Nongzhu said. She covered Furong with a light ball and quickly flew away. Yu Qianqiu didn't even have a chance to say goodbye to Furong. She was already gone. Yu Qianqiu withdrew his gaze and said slowly, the two soul formation stage cultivators have left. If we stay here any longer, I don't know if someone will come looking for trouble. Zhang Peng's eyes lit up and said, Master, I don't want to participate in that competition anymore. Why don't we leave Dayang City now? Yu Qianqiu turned his head around and said with a sneer, Don't worry, we are not in a hurry to leave. We can't let Hua Zhongming take advantage of us like this. He immediately forgot what Nongzhu just told him. He patted Zhang Peng's shoulder and joked, Have a good competition and try to get the princess into bed as soon as possible. Master, do you really want me to be the son-in-law of Dayang Kingdom? Zhang Peng was stunned. Damn! Don't you know what a joke? Yu Qianqiu coughed and said, There's no rule that says if you sleep with the princess, you must be the son-in-law, right? Then he brushed past Zhang Peng and said, You rest. I'll go find the person who invited me to drink. Zhang Peng was stunned and thought back to his words. Yu Qianqiu probably didn't expect that a casual joke of his would really make this guy do something stupid. Yu Qianqiu wandered to the gate of the embassy. He looked around and leaned against the high wall outside the gate, looking around. The guards at the gate looked at each other. They all knew that he was an important guest, but they did not know what this important guest wanted. He acted like a beggar. In fact, Yu Qianqiu was waiting for someone. He was waiting for Xian Lao San, who was always following him. He believed that Xian Lao San was not following him just because he wanted to buy him a drink. He must have something to tell him. Since he had something to tell him, he would definitely come back. He was afraid that Xian Lao San would be scared by Nongzhu and would not dare to go in. Therefore, Yu Qianqiu waited for him outside the gate. Just as Yu Qianqiu expected, after about an hour, Xian Lao San came out of nowhere. He shook his head and sighed while looking at the high wall of the embassy. He did not dare to go in again. On the other side, Yu Qianqiu cursed. If he had known earlier, he would have stood at the corner of the gate. He leaned against the wall and pretended not to see anything. Xian Lao San was bored and looked around. Finally, he saw him. At first, he thought he was mistaken. He rubbed his eyes, but the figure leaning against the wall looked very much like Yu Qianqiu. He could not help but walk over and poke his head over. It was indeed Yu Qianqiu, who was taking a nap with his head slightly lowered. He laughed and said, Yu Qianqiu, it's really you. Why are you hiding here? Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and ignored him. He said, Can't I bask in the sun? Bask in the sun. Xian Lao San looked at the darkening sky. Some people had started to light up their lanterns. There was no sun at this time. After a while, he suddenly realized, Oh. I understand now. Did Mr. Nongzhu kick you out? Ah. I understand. Mr. Nongzhu's temper is not very good. He shook his head and sighed. He touched his neck subconsciously, probably remembering the time when he was beaten by Nongzhu. Yu Qianqiu wanted to laugh when he heard his self-justifying explanation. He found that this guy was a little silly. So he deliberately asked with a sullen face, What are you doing here again? Xian Lao San clapped his hands and smiled. He pulled his sleeves and said, Let's go. I'll treat you to a drink. I know a good place in Daeong City. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and stared at him for a long time. His eyes were rolling around. No one knew what he was thinking. Xian Laosen felt guilty and asked, "What are you looking at?" "Nothing." Yu Qianqiu leisurely said, "It's not that I can't accompany you to drink, but I like to drink wine with women." He raised his hand and pointed at a distant street where colorful lanterns were lit and a place full of women were chattering. Chapter 503. Third Xian's eyes followed and his face turned green. He shook his head like a rattle. No, I can't go to that place. I can't go there. Let's go somewhere else." His master, Lu Yanqing, was the most beautiful woman in the world. There were many lechers in the cultivation world who came here because of her. The whole Lingfang Valley hated lechers the most. How would he dare to go to a brothel? If this got out, his brothers would beat him half to death even without his master's punishment. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and looked at him playfully. "What? Are you worried about money? If that's the case, then forget it. I only like to go to those lively places to drink. I don't want to go to other cold and quiet places." Third brother Xian pulled him back and said with a bitter face, "It's not about money. I can afford to drink wine no matter how expensive it is. But brothels and similar places are forbidden to the disciples of Lingfang Valley. Let's go somewhere else. There must be a more lively place." What a joke. Yu Qianqiu shook his hand off and snorted coldly. "What right do you have to apply the rules of your spirit Fang Valley to me? I just like to go to places with a lot of pretty girls to drink. Don't ask me to drink if you're not sincere. Don't look for me again. Sigh. Don't go. Let's talk about it." Third Xian stared blankly at Yu Qianqiu, who ignored him and went back into the embassy. He walked around the wall helplessly. After a while, Yu Qianqiu came out of the embassy again. He was wearing a brocade robe and waving a big golden folding fan in his hand. The big group of rich peonies was dazzling. He walked with his feet splayed and swaggered towards the pink slumber brothel. He had the demeanor of a playboy going to a brothel. Third Xian was dumbfounded. He thought to himself, there are all kinds of birds in a big forest. Although he thought so, it did not stop him from following Third Xian. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him, who was following him with his head lowered. He was also wondering why this guy was looking for him. He was willing to go against the rules and visit a brothel with him. Neither of them spoke. When they were about 10 meters away from the brightly lit building, Xian Laosan pulled him back again. Yu Qianqiu scolded coldly, "Why are you dragging me again? Let go. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." "Alright, you're amazing. I know you're the strongest below the soul formation stage. How about I call you Master Yu?" Third brother Xian smiled bitterly. Yu Qianqiu's expression softened a little. He did like the title of the #1 expert, even if it was below the soul formation stage. However, his words were merciless. "With your age, I can't afford to be your uncle. If you have something to say, spit it out. If you have something to say, spit it out. It's fine to drink here, but you're not allowed to do anything else." Xian Laosan gritted his teeth. "Let go." Yu Qianqiu knocked his hand with his fan. "You don't need to treat me, and I don't need you to accompany me. I can afford to have a drink with the courtesans. I don't need anyone to interfere with my freedom. Get out of my way. From today onwards, I won't have anything to do with you." "Wait." Xian Laosan took a step back. "I won't interfere, but you have to promise that you won't tell anyone else that I'm here." As soon as he said this, Yu Qianqiu's gloomy face brightened up. He put on a smile and patted his chest. "Don't worry about that. You can ask around in the Chinese cultivation world. I'm famous for keeping my word. I'll never tell anyone else that you're here. Only the heavens, the earth, you, and I will know about this. Ha! That's good, that's good. Xian Laosan's face was full of embarrassment. Let's go. Yu Qianqiu dragged him along. Xian Laosan kept looking around, afraid of bumping into someone he knew. The 3 golden words warm spring house shone brightly under the colorful lights. It was a gold-lettered signboard. The entrance was full of beauties. One by one, they pulled the passers-by inside. Some who didn't want to go in at first couldn't resist the crowd of breasts. They touched their money pouches, clenched their teeth and went in. Yu Qianqiu was dressed like a rich playboy. It was very eye-catching. One look and you could tell that he was a rich man. The eyes of the girls below Warm Spring Building immediately lit up, and they swarmed over, squeezing and rubbing against each other. Yu Qianqiu laughed unscrupulously and walked in. Third brother Xian closed his eyes under the heavy encirclement. He was almost dragged in by Yu Qianqiu. Once he entered the door, he felt his body turn cold. Young master, young master, young master, old master. A series of greetings were spat out, making people's bones go soft. Yu Qianqiu was obviously not afraid of this scene. He folded his fan and flicked it here and there, tapping here and there. Xian Laosan was already a little stunned. At this moment, a middle-aged brothel keeper came up to them. Before she could say anything that would make people's hearts ache, Yu Qianqiu waved his fan and sneered, "Good private room, good food and wine, red card girls. Not a single one can be missing. Otherwise, I'll get people to tear down your broken brothel." His words caused a bit of an awkward silence. The brothel keeper was stunned. But she was also a person of etiquette. Naturally, she wouldn't be annoyed by a word or two from a guest. She immediately put on a smile and turned around to greet the guests. The surrounding immediately returned to singing and dancing. The brothel keeper personally led the 2 to a large suite and asked if they were satisfied. She secretly looked at the 2 curiously. It was the first time she saw a hedonistic son forcefully dragging a farmer-like man to a brothel. Stop nagging and quickly make the arrangements. Yu Qianqiu took out a gold ingot and threw it to the brothel keeper. He shouted without hesitation, "Scram!" The brothel keeper caught the gold ingot and weighed it in her hand. When she realized it was real, her face bloomed with joy. He was indeed a rich man. She didn't care how unpleasant the guest's words were and quickly retreated. Money makes the world go round. This generous man's service could be said to be godlike. Not long after, the good food and wine that Yu Qianqiu ordered and the red card girls arrived. For a moment, the room was lively with singing and dancing. As he listened to the tune, Yu Qianqiu's mouth moved from left to right. A mouthful of wine, a mouthful of food, all of which were served by someone. His 2 hands were touching everywhere, provoking a series of cries of "annoying." Xian Laosan was surrounded and hugged by a few girls, but he felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He didn't dare to act rashly. He was like a block of wood, looking at the girls as if they were skeletons. "Touch your waist. So flirtatious. Touch your back. Sleep with me. Touch your thighs. So much water." Yu Qianqiu was singing an obscene song. Wherever he sang, his hands would touch. He kept flirting with the girls. Xian Laosan stared at him dumbfounded. Seeing how smooth he was playing, he was sure that this guy was a frequent customer of such occasions. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him from time to time, but seeing that he was unmoved, he gradually lost interest. A seductive girl with half of her snow-white breasts came up to him and said, "Master's song is really good. This is the first time I've heard it. Please do me a favor and teach me. Once I master it, I'll definitely sing it for you. You think I'm a singer? Yu Qianqiu's tone was cold. The smile on his face disappeared instantly. His gaze was like a sharp knife, scaring the girl. The girls around him looked at each other and immediately came up to ease the atmosphere. Get out, all of you get out. Yu Qianqiu shouted. With a wave of his arms, 5 or 6 girls fell to the ground. He pointed at the girls around Xie and Lao San and said, "You guys get out too. Without my permission, no one is allowed to come in." A cold and gloomy aura caused the dozen or so girls to shiver, and they immediately retreated with pale faces. Without the chattering and soft girls around him, Xie and Lao San heaved a sigh of relief. Yu Qianqiu picked up the big fan on the table, opened it and waved it. He said coldly, "Tell me. What do you mean by following me around?" Xie and Lao San was stunned. He waved his hand and said, "Nothing, nothing. I just want to be friends with you." Bullshit. Yu Qianqiu closed his fan and pointed at his face. Your face says that you have ulterior motives. You don't even know how to lie. No, I really don't. Xie and Lao San denied again. Fine, since you don't want to tell me the truth, then let's go our separate ways. You go your own way and I'll go my own way. We'll have nothing to do with each other in the future. Yu Qianqiu turned around and left. Wait. Xie and Lao San blocked his way and said helplessly, "I really don't want anything from you. I just want to be friends with you and invite you to Lingfang Valley as a guest." Is it really that simple? Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously. He thought to himself, inviting me to Lingfang Valley is the real reason. Xie and Lao San nodded sincerely and said, "It's really that simple." Yu Qianqiu looked at him in disgust. He did not believe his words at all. But he was a master in the last phase of the tribulation passing stage. For him to be so humble, he must have something to ask of him. He did not expose him, as long as he knew what was going on. He smiled and said, "You want to be friends with me? Do you know that I have a lot of enemies? Aren't you afraid that I'll drag you down? What's the point of being friends if I'm afraid of this? A true friend should share blessings and difficulties together." Xie and Lao San patted his chest happily. Share blessings and difficulties together. Why does it feel like there's a trap in his words? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He noticed that Xie and Lao San's eyes were a little unfocused when he said this. But now he really believed that Xie and Lao San wanted to be friends with him. Because the phrase, "share blessings and difficulties together," had a profound meaning. Hee. That's a good word. I like it. I'll be friends with you. Come, let's go to my place and have a chat. Yu Qianqiu said happily. He thought to himself, let's put blessings and difficulties aside first. Let's get a bodyguard to accompany me first. This was also the reason why he came to find Xie and Lao San this time. Before he left, he threw out another ingot of gold. The madam was so happy as if she had seen her own father. She kept asking them to come again next time. After returning to the embassy, Yu Qianqiu arranged for Xie and Lao San to stay in a small courtyard for the time being. Xie and Lao San calmly accepted the arrangement when he found that Nongzhu was not there. In the dead of night, Yu Qianqiu quietly disappeared from the room. When he reappeared, he was already in the wilderness. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.